Hello everyone. Today's crime story takes you to Newport Beach, a city in Southern California known as one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. Thanks to its pleasant climate and beautiful scenery, it has gradually become a paradise for vacationers. Consequently, it has also become one of the most expensive areas in the country, with an average house price over $1 million, truly a domain of the rich. On a sunny day, October 10th, 2012, in the afternoon, a private school bus dropped off students in an upscale residential neighborhood. Normally, parents would pick up their children here. However, that day, 3 boys waited for a long time, but their parents did not show up. The eldest boy called his parents, but no one answered. Fortunately, a kind neighbor drove the boys home. When they arrived, the house was unusually quiet. The neighbor, seeing that no one was home, took the boys back to his house, gave them dinner, and tried calling their parents again, but still, no one answered. At this point, the neighbor had no choice but to call the police. The police arrived quickly at the scene. This was a 2-story mansion worth $2.5 million. Upon entering the house, the police began to check each room. The first floor showed nothing unusual. Everything was neatly arranged, clean, with no signs of a break-in. However, when they reached the second floor, the seriousness of the situation became evident. In the office, they found the safe door wide open, with no cash inside, only some financial documents, passports, and personal items of the homeowners. Next, in the bathroom, they saw a chaotic scene: broken pieces of a vase and a container, blood splattered around the bathtub drain and on the walls. The mess in the bathroom indicated that there might have been a struggle there. The police also checked the garage and found that the homeowner's SUV was missing. Security cameras from the neighborhood showed that the SUV had left the area at around 1:30 p.m. that day. Initially, the police suspected that a fight and intentional murder had occurred in the house, but they couldn't confirm if anyone had been killed. Just then, the police received another call. The caller was the homeowner, Peter Chadwick, and the call came from San Diego, 160 kilometers away. According to Peter, on the day of the incident, he had brought home a painter named Juan to do some painting. While Juan went upstairs to inspect the walls, Peter went downstairs to get some supplies. At that time, Peter's wife, Mrs. Lim, was taking a bath upstairs. Just seconds later, Peter heard his wife scream from upstairs. When he ran up, he saw Juan attacking his wife in the bedroom. Juan, holding a small knife, threatened Peter, leaving him no choice but to follow Juan's demands, moving his wife's body to the back seat of their car and driving to San Diego, a border city between the U.S. and Mexico, under Juan's direction. Upon arriving in San Diego, Peter met another man named Chen. Juan and Chen together placed Mrs. Lim's body into a pickup truck, planning to dispose of it in Mexico. After that, they left Peter at a gas station. Peter's call to the police also came from this gas station. The dispatcher, after hearing Peter's story, felt skeptical because his account seemed implausible. Firstly, why would Juan attack Peter's wife when they didn't know each other? Then, the sequence of events Peter described was very messy. If Peter had brought the painter home, why was his wife taking a bath upstairs? And if she was upstairs bathing, why did Peter let the painter go upstairs like that? Just seconds after the painter went upstairs, Peter's wife was dead. The police began to suspect Peter and tried to prolong the call to give the police enough time to arrive. Before Peter could hang up, the local police arrived at the gas station. Peter met the police without any sign of resistance, anger, or sadness, but very calmly, and went to the station. The police noticed he had scratches on his neck, bite marks on his arm, and some dried blood on his hands. When questioned about his wife, Peter refused to answer. They quickly called a lawyer. Peter's actions made the police suspect that he might have been the one who caused his wife's death. The investigators also noticed some inconsistencies in Peter's story. Peter said his wife was killed around 11 a.m. the previous day, but security cameras showed Peter's SUV leaving the area about 2 hours later, with only Peter in the car, no one else. Juan was nowhere to be seen in the area where Peter claimed they had met. The police also reviewed several security cameras, but did not see any suspicious vehicles. Therefore, it seemed that the person named Juan did not exist. The police asked Peter about the injuries on his neck and arms, and he said they were from the struggle with the painter, but he couldn't clearly explain his injuries or the details of the altercation. Eventually, the police found a suitcase in Peter's car. Inside the suitcase were some men's clothes, seemingly hastily packed. Would a criminal kidnap someone and give them time to pack a suitcase? This seemed very strange, so the police didn't believe Peter's statements. On the same day, the police arrested him on charges of first-degree murder. 7 days later, near where Peter was arrested, investigators found a large trash bin on a deserted hill containing a very nice wallet belonging to Peter's wife, Mrs. Lim. The wallet contained a permanent resident card and $10,000 in cash. Additionally, there was a green carpet in the trash bin. When they unrolled the carpet, they found Mrs. Lim's body inside. The discovery of the body seemed almost guided, as this trash bin was supposed to be cleared out the previous Thursday morning, right after Peter's phone call. However, due to a dispute over costs, the trash bin hadn't been dealt with for a long time, so the body appeared and became a crucial key to solving the case. Forensic investigation results showed that Mrs. Lim had endured a fierce struggle before being suffocated and drowned. Clearly, if the character Juan existed, he couldn't have carried out these actions within a few seconds or minutes, and Peter was the only one capable of committing the murder. But why did he do it? What happened between the couple in their luxurious mansion? Peter Chadwick, 48 years old, was British. He had dual British-American citizenship and was a wealthy real estate investor. His wife, Mrs. Lim, 46, was of Chinese-Malaysian descent, having come to the U.S. for studies in the 1980s and attended Arizona State University. On the university campus, she met and fell in love with Peter, and they quickly married. Both came from wealthy families. Peter's father was in real estate, and Peter himself invested in real estate, primarily in rental properties, so he didn't have to work much, but could still support the entire family. Although Mrs. Lim had studied in the U.S., she was born and raised in Malaysia and didn't understand much about American society. After having 3 children, she became a homemaker, while her husband, Peter, took care of outside work. At the time of the incident, their 3 children were 14, 10, and 8 years old. In the eyes of outsiders, they were a perfect couple, wealthy, with plenty of free time, and 3 well-behaved children. They often hosted parties with friends at their mansion and sometimes took their children on trips worldwide, making many people very envious. Friends said Mrs. Lim was kind, cheerful, humorous, and friendly, well-loved by neighbors and friends. In contrast, Peter was quite reserved and quiet, making others feel there was something mysterious about him. Outwardly, they appeared to be a harmonious couple, but before the incident, their relationship had irreparable cracks. The initial cause was financial issues, as Peter seemed to have encountered some trouble with his real estate investments. Although they maintained a luxurious lifestyle, Peter was no longer as wealthy as he appeared. Additionally, Mrs. Lim discovered her husband had an extramarital affair. She found this out when she accidentally saw a list of notes on her husband's computer, including expenses for an abortion in California, massage services, and the names of divorce lawyers. According to close friends of Mrs. Lim, she often cried to her friends about how her husband mistreated her. Peter had also shared with others his desire for a divorce, but he hadn't acted on it yet because he wanted his children to have a perfect family and a good life, full of parental love. It can be said that about a year or 2 before the incident, the relationship between Mrs. Lim and Peter had completely broken down. Mrs. Lim's accounts all had passwords related to her 3 children, showing her care and responsibility for them. A few days before the incident, she was still teaching her youngest child math, taking her eldest son, 14, out to eat, and planning for Thanksgiving, showing that she was a careful and responsible mother. However, on the other hand, she was also preparing for a divorce. Mrs. Lim had little work experience in the U.S. and was heavily dependent on her husband financially and for her lifestyle. But in the last 2 years, she began to lose weight, put on makeup, pay more attention to her appearance, and often went out for meals and trips with friends, gradually shifting her focus from family to self-love and independence. Before the incident, Mrs. Lim discovered a shameful truth that Peter had contracted a sexually transmitted disease, which could also be why their relationship had deteriorated even further. Some neighbors also heard Mrs. Lim's frantic screams the morning before the incident. At the time, they didn't call the police, thinking it was just a typical marital argument, unaware that something terrible would happen the next day. Although all the theories were very plausible and evidence pointed to Peter as the main suspect, the police did not detain him but released him on a $1 million bail. He had to surrender his British-American passports and only needed to attend court sessions monthly. Peter went to Santa Barbara and stayed at his father's house. However, not long after, the police realized that releasing Peter on bail was a grave mistake. In January 2015, Peter was absent from a court session. When the police went to his father's house, they learned that Peter had left and no one knew where he had gone. Later, a relative mentioned that Peter had said he was going to Seattle. In Peter's room, the police found 2 books on how to evade the law and change one's identity. This time, Peter hid much better than before. He withdrew all the money from his bank accounts, took cash advances from multiple credit cards, and carried $1 million in cash. He also spread misleading information to obstruct the police, such as browser search history about fleeing to Canada, an airline ticket receipt to Seattle, and search history about living in Mexico. Additionally, the police discovered that Peter had used a false identity to escape from the airport. Security cameras showed that around 11 a.m. on January 9th, 2015, a taxi arrived at Peter's parents' house. The driver said he was carrying a female passenger who, after getting out, went into the airport, but quickly changed into male clothing. This person was clearly Peter. However, Peter didn't board any flight. Instead, he wandered around the airport for 6 hours before calling another taxi to leave. That same day, his phone was completely turned off. Later, the police found Peter's phone in a garbage dump. From then on, Peter had no contact with any family members, including his 3 children. The police quickly added Peter to the international wanted list and conducted searches in the US, Canada, and Mexico. But 3 years passed without any trace of him. In 2018, the police decided to change their strategy by starting a crime blog, publicly sharing Peter's personal information, and offering a $100,000 reward to encourage people to provide information about him. Peter's crime quickly spread everywhere. The police received hundreds of tips, and one of these tips helped them track down Peter. On August 4th, 2019, after more than 4 years on the run, Peter was captured by federal police near the city of Puebla in southern Mexico. At that time, Peter was living in a high-end villa community for expatriates in a small town. To conceal his identity, he dyed his hair black and grew a beard, trying to look younger than his actual age. When the police searched his residence, they found many fake identification documents. Peter even pretended to be a SHIELD agent to deceive the local police. During his time on the run, he used cash to stay at luxury hotels, but if a hotel required a passport, he would move to another hotel. Peter told his new friends that his entire family had died in 2014 due to the disappearance of Flight MH370, and these friends also found Peter to be quite mysterious. In 2016, Peter began a close relationship with a local woman named Claudia in the town of Pascualino. On a Monday in May 2016, Peter, Claudia, and her sister went to a concert. On the way back, they had a car accident, resulting in Claudia's death while her sister was in a coma for 15 days in the hospital. However, Claudia's family was asked to sign a legal document absolving Peter of responsibility. Claudia's mother said the document's content was entirely fabricated and that Claudia's death was related to Peter. After this incident, Peter left the area and settled in another small town. There, he worked as a cleaner at a cafe. He lived in hiding, very afraid of being recognized. Later, when he ran out of money, Peter called his family asking for help, and the police used the location of this public call to arrest him. It wasn't until February 2022, nearly 10 years after his wife's death, that Peter, then 57 years old, admitted to killing her. Ultimately, Peter was sentenced to 15 years in prison for second-degree murder and had to serve at least 12 years before being eligible for parole. Some believe Peter should also be held accountable for the death of the Mexican woman in the accident. But unfortunately, that case was not brought to trial. Indeed, the most difficult thing to talk about is the future, as we can never be sure what tomorrow will bring. Is it believable that a marriage between two people from two distant countries, lasting more than a decade, a seemingly very happy family with 5 members, could dissolve into nothing overnight? Pity the children who are truly unfortunate. What do you think about this sentence? Is it too light for the crimes this murderer committed? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time, goodbye, and see you in the next video.